Welcome back to Teaching the Unteachables, where we dive into teaching and learning methodologies for professionals like you. HVAC Excellence is committed to providing resources for HVACR educators. Learn more at escogroup.org and select HVACR Education Resource Network. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are spending time with our very own Mr. Tom Tebbe. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Clifton. I'm very well, thank you.
So you have wore many hats in the HVACR industry. Before we dive into all of the different hats of an instructor, give us a little idea of the many hats that you have worn over the years, because they are many.
Well, I like the way you said over the years, because I'm getting up there now, so I've worn many different hats.
Right.
Let's just start from the beginning very quickly.
Yes.
I have been a helper with my father. My family owned 11 air conditioning companies. From there, I went to school through United States Air Force and through a technical center to get my specialist degree in HVACR. I became a teacher at public schools, at private schools, and so forth. Besides being a technician, a shop owner, a contractor, and a teacher for utility companies, for major manufacturers, and so forth during my career. I taught full-time at private and public schools, HVACR, community colleges, technical colleges, and on occasions I taught programs at four-year colleges regarding occupational analysis and program design. From there, I became assistant director at my school after teaching for many years, and 25 years in the classroom. Became a director of a school, which we now call dean, and then I became a regional director over 5 schools in my career. So I've been around the block a few times, and I'm very, very passionate about quality education.
I absolutely adore these conversations that you and I have, because you shed light into where you can go in this industry. You know, a lot of people, when they get into the HVAC industry, they expect that they're going to be in a certain place, and they never focus on where you can go. And a lot of that has to do with they've never been introduced to the opportunities. And you are just the epitome of all of the opportunities that can happen for an HVACR technician. So we're so blessed to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very flattered. I hope I can make a contribution and help some of the other instructors realize how important these other roles are in education, besides the fact of teaching, disseminating, presenting information.
That's exactly it, because many of us, like yourself, like myself, when we make that transition from being a good technician where we had some roles and responsibilities, and then we move into the classroom, we don't realize what each of those hats are. And sometimes they can be a challenge. So the goal is, like all of our podcast and all of the efforts that we do, is to be able to bring some enlightenment to each of our roles and responsibilities to help make things easier, to make that transition better and faster. So let's talk about the one that gets overlooked. I mean, and it's probably the reason we all stay in these roles, is because we become a leader and a role model. And sometimes that's very new and very difficult for people to accept.
Okay, I'd like to do that, but if you don't mind, I'd like to just share a quick story with you about why I remain very compassionate about providing quality education over almost 40 years of my life.
Yes. And
I'll be very brief here. This goes back to within the first 3 years that I became a teacher. And my wife and I made a trip to Mexico. We were going to be gone for a month. And back then, you were stopped quite often by the military on your way down to the portion of the country. Mm-hmm. Well, we were stopped by a small brigade who had rifles and so forth, and surrounded our vehicles, and they wanted to see, at that time, your visa. Well, on my visa, it had as occupation, it had a professor.
Oh.
They didn't use the term instructor, and they didn't use the term teacher. So the captain asked for my papers. He spoke English fairly well, and I gave him my papers, and he looked at it, and he looked at my wife. He says, see, la professeur. And I said, well, I'm a teacher at a technical and community college. And he said, see. And he turned around and he showed my papers to all of the others that were with him, under him, and they all waved and so forth. So I asked him, I said, why did you do that? Why are you making a big deal of that? And he said, In our country, a professor, we see them as people that work with other people to help them improve, help them get a career, to help somebody afford them a better life. To us in Mexico, that is the most honorable profession or vocation a person can have in life.
Wow.
We hold professors in the highest of esteem in all occupations in our country. And thank you very much for visiting our country, Professor. And I've never forgotten that, because it reminds me every day of our responsibility that whatever we do, whenever we do it, however we do it, it's supposed to be in the best interest of helping somebody else succeed.
That gives me chills thinking about that. I mean, that's the reason we're here. That's the reason I'm here. And I know it's the reason you're here. And it's interesting how it has different perspectives in different places in the world. But absolutely, it is. It's an honor. It's a privilege, and it's a responsibility to be able to lead people into their own roles and responsibilities in life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as far as role models and leadership is concerned, I think we all know that having pursued many different studies, that there are many different leadership styles.
Yes.
Autocratic style, the nurturing altruistic style of leadership, the democratic style of leadership. But putting all of those fancy terms aside, in education, I think that the leadership style that's most appropriate and serves an instructor best is to lead by example.
Yes, absolutely.
If I may, let me just say, these are simple things, but if we expect students to be on time, then the instructor should always be on time and start class on time. There's nothing more offensive, in my opinion, to the class than to walk in late with a cup of coffee and be a little dreary and say, well, look, we're going to wait a few minutes because some are running late. That's a very, very awkward thing to do. It sets a very poor stage. It actually discourages some people to not come at all or come late like the others.
Absolutely.
Dress appropriately. We expect students to dress appropriately for the profession, so we should too. So what I'm saying is, in my experience, we didn't have a instructor dress code at our school, but I decided to go ahead and develop a uniform for myself. It was dark blue pants, light blue shirt, and a little tie that was clipped. You could take it off when working around equipment. That ended up identifying me as the HVACR instructor at the school. Also made it easy, Clifton, as you know, not to have to get up in the morning and decide what you're going to wear. I had 5 pants, 5 shirts.
Right.
So you can set that for yourself. The students like that because nobody else had it. They decided they were going to adopt a hat that said HVACR students. Well, it became contagious. The next thing you know, everybody at the school is doing it.
Nice.
Another piece of advice on leadership is be prepared. We expect our students to be prepared for class. So we should have a fun-filled activity day prepared for these students each and every day. It shouldn't be catch as catch can.
It's exactly right, because it kind of leads into the entertainer role, because we actually have a role of becoming an entertainer. And for many technicians, that might not feel comfortable. So we may have to work on our entertainer perspective of our new position.
Absolutely. And in this leadership role, be excited about what you're doing.
Yes.
That transfers to the students immediately. If you're not passionate, you're not excited about the day's activities, how can we expect them to be excited and engage in everything that's happening? So I think it's beneficial to call a group together in the morning and tell them exactly what the day is going to provide, what the objectives of the day are. We even do that in textbooks. So they have something to look forward to. They know exactly what's going to happen throughout the course of the day. It's not do this, do that type of activities. As a leader, you can present them with problems and different challenges. You can put problems before the class starts on the whiteboard and provide extra points. You can have treasure hunts. You can have competition between the various groups of students if that happens to be your situation in class. And obviously, let me make this clear, what the roles we're talking about now are full-time air conditioning, refrigeration instructors at community and technical colleges.
Exactly.
It's a little bit different when we're talking about industry trainers and so on, obviously. Another thing to be a good leader, be respectful. You want to be respectful to all your students. And those are the marks of a leader in anything and everything that you do. Become a leader, be respectful, and treat all age levels the same. Don't make any exceptions. That's when you get in trouble. Nobody ever complains that the rules are enforced equitably and consistently.
No, so true.
Now, I'd like to leave that leadership part with a quote, if I may.
Yep.
It's always stuck with me. It was from one of the older CEOs at General Electric named Jack Welch. You may be familiar with him.
Mm-hmm.
He said, once you become a leader, a teacher, your success is about growing others.
Wow. So true.
I think that says a lot. That is your job, to grow other people now, to help them. Now,
exactly.
Entertainer, if I may go on for a second.
Sure.
Well, entertainer, I think all instructors in some way feel that passion to be an entertainer.
I believe so.
There's nothing we all love more than to get in front of that audience. And there's no greater satisfaction for them to enjoy what you had to say and get a lot out of the class.
Just watch it come alive.
Oh, baby, watch it come alive. It reminded me of somebody. It reminded me of somebody that says, well, hey, how are you? Welcome to the ESCO HVAC show. and my point there is, you got to start the day lively for the students. You've got to have a little energy yourself, because how you project yourself in the morning and throughout the day is exactly what they're going to mimic throughout the day. You come in sluggish, bored, tired, and everything else. That's exactly what you're going to transmit to the class. That's the way they're going to feel. So start off positive. Tell a story. Each person has their own way of entertaining.
Yep.
But I can tell you the one that I've always liked to call the class together in the morning. I think every instructor should. Set the stage for the day, state the objectives.
Absolutely it does.
Of various groups. But I would walk in like you do with the hey. And I would say, good morning. It's going to be a wonderful day. I have so much planned for you, students, that you're just going to be jumping with joy. We're going to be energized all day. I can't wait to get this started. I'm on a high. I hope y'all feel the same. And they would look at me sometimes, and one guy raised his hand. I said, see that? Look at that. We already have a question. And he said, Mr. Tebbe, my question is, we don't know what kind of medicine you may be taking, but can you get us some? I said, well, it's not medicine. It's attitude. You got
That's right. It's motivation.
You got to come in lively. So I suggest doing that, and add a little humor to the class.
That's
There's
right.
nothing greater than to tell the students about your successes and your failures on the job. Some of the silly mistakes that you made, some of the things that you had problems with in school and overcame, or some of the silly things that you did. Keep it lively, keep it respectful, and also give them an opportunity. You want a dialogue always with the students. You want it to be conversational, because they always get more out of that, and you're including them, in everything that's happening. And always encourage that dialogue, and always, when it comes to being that entertainer, be challenging. You can be challenging
Exactly.
in a way.
I was getting ready to bring that up. We can be professionally challenging. I think it's very healthy to have that in our dialogue.
Well, that's correct. The dialogue with the students is important, and I'm going to talk about that. When you're ready, a little bit more about why it's important to engage the students in the dialogue, and a little bit more about retention.
Sure.
When we get to that, I don't know if you had a particular format that you wanted to follow.
No, this is all positive things for us to talk about in different roles and different opportunities we have in front of the classroom. So, no, let's keep going.
Okay, well, I don't want to steal your thunder, but the next thing is mentor.
Yes.
And this is big. We sometimes forget that we're not just dispensers of information.
Right.
We're mentor to many of these students. The whole complexion of how education is delivered and the role that instructors play has dramatically changed, just as technology has changed dramatically over the past couple of days. I mean, seriously changed.
Yes.
And let me just say this. Criteria, or if you will, or research criteria, has shown that there is definitely a direct connection between a caring and a knowledgeable teacher and a secure and a motivated learner. Students need to know that teachers care about how they learn and the things that help or hinder their learning. And I'd like to say that just recently I conducted a survey of young men and young women in their first year of technical college.
Okay.
And the most important thing to them is to know that their instructor really cares. And
I believe that.
They can tell whether or not, they said they can anyway, that an instructor really cares or don't care. And I said, well, what is your biggest dislikes in doing many of the students? They said, what we don't like or discourages us the most is when an instructor wants to come too far down to our level using our type of language, our type of dress to be one of the boys.
Huh.
We want them to maintain their professionalism, that professional distance from the students. We don't want them to become one of us.
Exactly.
That was an interesting statement.
Boy, that's profound, actually.
Yeah, I thought that they would want you to, and they said, not really. We want you to be the role model we look up to.
Yeah.
We already have our own group of people.
Hmm.
And let me just say this about being a mentor. The only way you can truly be a mentor is you have to learn about the defining characteristics of the students that are in your class. I mean, how can you mentor somebody if you don't know anything about them? So
Exactly.
what little bit you know about their social, their economic, their cultural background, particularly their learning styles, their needs, their abilities, their aptitudes and interests. How do you do that in such a short period of time? So let me just suggest there is a way of getting at least a handle on all of this. If you're going to be a true mentor, then you have to know something about their background, because they will come to you with things other than academics. They will come
Absolutely.
that may need help regarding their future.
Well, it becomes very important to start learning everyone individually, because an additional role that we play that we may not realize is hopefully we become an employment agent for our students, trying to place them in a proper career path once they leave the program.
Absolutely. And another thing I would like to say that we are responsible for, but we don't always do. And I think we need to, as a mentor, create a love of learning.
Yes.
I think we have to make sure that all of the students understand how important and how relevant the HVACR industry is to our way of life. And I would suggest telling the students from time to time that you're entering a very honorable and necessary industry, how what we do affects human comfort conditioning, food preservation, food processing, various manufacturing processes, transport refrigeration, the medical field, and let them know that it's more than maybe just fixing residential air conditioning systems, which I use the term human comfort conditioning because I remember the utilities preferred to use that when I talked with them. They said, Tom, you're not teaching residential air conditioning, you're talking human comfort conditioning, because you're talking about filtration, about purification, humidity control.
It's not just heating, cooling,
conditioning.
That's
So
right.
I said, and I think we need to let the students remind them what an honorable profession they are entering and what a necessary profession it is to our way of life. Now, getting back to leadership for just a second, if I may.
Sure.
It's okay. Another thing you can do about being a leadership, if you're having a little difficulties in class, everybody doesn't need to even consider this all the time, but sometimes depending on the level of students you have, the type of students you have in the class, a written contract has been recommended for years. In other words, to maintain discipline, you say, okay, as your instructor, I guarantee I'll be here on time. I'll be prepared for class. I'll have engaging activities. I will return your test papers on time in a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera. As a student, your responsibility is to be here on time, to be prepared for class, et cetera, et cetera. And that way, if there's ever any type of a disciplinary problem, let's see who violated the contract.
Exactly. It's a written proclamation.
Because students have a share in this. We have a commitment to teach. They have to make a commitment to do all of the things that a student should do. Sometimes that basic contract is just a good reminder, like, hey, I didn't even think of it that way. I'm just a student. I don't really have to do anything if I don't want to.
Sure.
A contract could be helpful.
Well, in that contract, would you feel it relevant to address professional development? Because it's one thing to be a good instructor, but what about being a good instructor that tries to stay up to date with changes in the industry to be able to provide a current and applicable curriculum?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll say this, that obviously instructors need to take the time to keep informed about changes that affect the way we deliver our material and technical improvements in the industry. I don't believe any instructor should be complacent about what they know. You have to stay current if you're truly going to give students the opportunities for the jobs that exist today. There's an overwhelming amount of information that escalates, in my opinion, the pace of research and discovery that instructors have to do. And that's
Definitely.
something we're going to have to take time to do. The one thing we want to avoid is teaching any outdated principles and technologies. We're not doing the contractors, we're not doing the industry, we're not doing the student a disservice because they're not going to be prepared for the world today. And there's a lot of opportunities out there for students through different students organizations, as well as there would be for instructors. There's webinars, there's conferences, there's trade shows, there's industry classes, and so forth that can help students and instructors appreciate the different types of learning dynamics and technical advancements that have been made. So it's just a matter of taking that energy and placing it in the right way. And I'll say this, I always follow that up, that little speech I just made with the students with, these are things and opportunities for you to take advantage of. And remember, the choices you make determine the life that you lead. So every day you make thousands of choices. The choices you make regarding education and studying and showing up for class on time and getting engaged in the suggested product are going to determine how successful you are. You're the one that controls your future, not me.
Tom Tebbe, such a plethora of knowledge. We're blessed to have you with us, and we thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.